Great. Everybody set? Ready? Welcome to the future. Now, ideally, we wouldn't have slides. We would just be able to imagine, and we would beam it directly to your heads, and you would just see what we see and think what we think. But unfortunately, we don't have that technology yet, so you got to watch the slides with us. Now, it's the future, right? But we really can't predict it. But there are some things we can do to help us get ready for that future. You...
Make it stop doing that.
Sorry?
Okay. Next slide.
Sure.
Okay, we're a little rattled, but we'll get into it in a minute.
Last year, we were, and how many people were here last year? Yeah, do you remember the timid tester and the cowboy programmer? Well, last year, we had tied up our customer and put him in the corner, and the customer couldn't talk, is gag and bound, but in came, how come, there we go.
Oh, you
What
have a
is
clicker.
wrong? I got the clicker. Super agile person
Woo!
to the rescue. Our super agile person last year untied the customer, unbound the customer, brought her up onto stage, and magic happened. Collaboration. Got the customer and the programmer and the tester all together, and we started working, right? But that was last year. And the theme for this year is the future. So where do we go from here, right? That's not a problem anymore. So welcome to Star Trek Enterprise, Stardate 5928. Right? I'm representing Captain Kirk. For those of you too young, he was the original captain. And Spock, my science officer, right? Live long and prosper. We really want to be taking us to the future, getting us prepared for the future, right? So come on a journey with us as we go. We want to talk about some of our challenges that we have, and where we can help, where we can start thinking about things, what we could do, how might we change our conversation. So we'll kind of talk about what we can do this week to help you prepare for the future as well, to be able to adapt. Some of the challenges that folks have had, and even at Lean Coffee this morning, we were hearing some of the challenges that people have. And there's all kinds of things that is happening every day. I have a little bit of a feedback. Like I have had somebody who was it that was wearing their smartwatch? And I was
it was Brian.
Brian
in here.
And I'm going, that would be kind of cool. How do we learn to test those things, right? How do we learn to adapt to all of these challenges?
And then the POTS lightning, there was someone who was testing GPSs that drive giant tractors, and people testing music software and radio software. So we've already seen almost before the conference starts, all the challenges that we're going to face in the future.
Right, including things like big data and distributed teams and those things that have been around for a while, right? So what we want to do is, what tools do we need now? I mean, we would like the flying car up in the top, but maybe you have the Mini Cooper, and you need to make do with that. So how can we adapt? What can we do to the future?
So I've been on my current team for a little more than 2 years. And in that time, I've had to learn how to test a new API with curl commands, which I'd never done before. I had to learn how to test iOS applications. That was all new to me. I had to learn how to automate UI smoke tests for iOS apps. That's been really hard. Testing a JavaScript application, learning how to use the Chrome web developer tools to debug, to do profiling, to check the memory usage, performance, and things like that. All new to me. And at the same time, exploratory testing. I also do customer support for my team. I help with that. So it's a lot and lots of multitasking. And I really wish that I could be somebody else to do some of these tasks.
Yeah. Don't we all wish we were shapeshifters?
So I wish I could channel Elizabeth Hendrickson when I need to do exploratory testing. Or, I wish I could be cheesy when I need to do any kind of automation or specification by example, or David Evans. Lots of people I wish I could just turn into for that moment. But, all through the ages, humans have desired to do this shape-shifting, from werewolves and vampires to our shapeshifters in the future, from where we're from, back in Stardate 5900 or something.
Right.
So we don't have that ability, but what can we do? Well, I can improve my skills. I can broaden and deepen my T-shaped skills. So what did I do to learn to test APIs? Well, I paired with a programmer. Sometimes I remote paired. And so I could learn from the person who wrote the code how I might be able to test it. I paired with programmers to spike specification by example solutions, for example. For the iOS testing, for the iOS automation, my fellow tester, Joellen Carter, and I have been pairing. Neither one of us had any clue how to use these tools for iOS automation. We hadn't coded in JavaScript. We hadn't used Apple's tool set before. We're searching around for test runners and things like that. But just by virtue of having a buddy there, we felt brave enough to push through all the many obstacles that we faced. And we've really made a lot of progress. We also collaborated with the programmers on the team who know a lot more about it, and so they helped us with some of the challenges that were even too big for us. So just lots and lots of collaboration, learning new things, reading books on iOS automation, for example, and coming to conferences like this. So if you look at the awesome program that Alex Colino put together, you'll see a wide variety of sessions. Some of them will help you improve your thinking skills. I think there was something about using different parts of your brain to do different types of testing. And then there were more technical ones about security testing, writing clean test code. We have testing and coding dojos going on. We have the test lab, where you can actually go hands-on and play and practice your technical and thinking skills. So we have lots of opportunities right here to grow our T-shaped skills. Yesterday in our tutorial, Marcelo, I can't think of his last name. Are you here, Marcelo?
I think he went home.
He came up with this idea of a cube-shaped tester. So
Rubik's Cube.
be a Rubik's Cube, and you have all the different colors, and you can flip them around all different ways. So for different challenges that we have, we might need a different set of skills to address those challenges. And if we're a Rubik's Cube, we can change and adapt. I love that metaphor.
Yeah, I did too. Now,
and then, again, learning technical skills so that we can collaborate with programmers and other people on our team. Think about what it means to you. We really wish that we had Superman's crystals and have insights into things like, how do we test the big data, right? Give us a vision, but we don't have that. But we have tools at our disposal, like exploratory testing. And Janet, you had a good story about a team's approach to exploratory testing.
So we really try to get people, like, read Elizabeth Hendrickson's Explore It, absolutely. But when I work with different teams, I encourage them to try different exploratory techniques, whether it's tours or personas or different things. And it's interesting when I go into the different teams, what they try and what they have success with. So one of the really important things to remember is when somebody comes and says, this will work for you, try it. If it doesn't, because this one team I was in, they said the tours, they didn't work at all for us. We could not get them to behave the way we think they should, to be able to really get excited about them. But then I went into another team, and they loved the idea, and it worked wonders for them. So you really have to be able to adapt and understand your context, what works well for you.
Yeah, on our team, we have 3 testers, but all of us are doing other things part-time like customer support, and probably we have 15 or 16 programmers. So there's a lot of testing to do. And what we found works for us is we testers write exploratory testing charters based on Elizabeth's template in her Explore It book. We put those into a testing project and group them by the feature that we're testing. Then when it's time to do some exploratory testing, different developer pairs will assign themselves these chores, and they'll do the exploratory testing. And the charters help them understand, what area am I trying to test without constraining them too much and still letting them be free to explore. And they love it. They're just amazed at the bugs that they find, and they're happy it didn't go to production, and what they learn from exploratory testing. And they've really seen the value of it, which is something we've really seen grow in Agile teams in the past few years, and I think that's something that'll continue to grow in the future. And other testing challenges the programmers on our team are willing to take on. As I said, we're a JavaScript application, and we're a project tracking tool. And we were having several customers report a really bad problem. They'd say, well, I was just moving some stories around, and the application crashed. We could not reproduce this problem, but we were getting lots of reports. And so we had a hack week. We have one every quarter. So one of the programmers decided to try something called generative tests. Anybody here using generative tests? It's pretty new. And the idea behind generative tests is the programmer defines the shape of the data, the shape of the inputs, and properties of the expected outputs. And this amazing test runner generates randomized data, pumps it through the code, and looks for failures. If it finds a failure, it will then try different data to narrow the failure down to the minimum actions that will cause the problem. And his experiment actually identified this bug that all these customers were reporting to us, so that we had a test now to reproduce it and we could fix it. Now, this didn't replace any of the testing we were doing. It doesn't replace unit tests or any of our other automated tests or exploratory testing, but it's a kind of automated exploratory testing that gives us more confidence in our code. So that's an example of how, when you have these different skill sets on your team, people with different experience, all focused on testing and quality, they can come up with a lot more creative solutions. So that diversity really helps.
It does. It really does. Now, a common challenge that a lot of people have, and it's not new, it's been around for a long time, is distributed teams. How many people are on a distributed team? Yeah. So there's at least half, probably closer to 2/3, right? It's, maybe not a good trend to see it, but it's part of reality right now. So we really want to...
And Captain Kirk, we're on a distributed team too, because the enterprise is up there.
Yeah, I know. Actually, Lisa and I are a distributed team. We work together. Our book is definitely done apart. But you learn out how to do things. So when you're on a distributed team, what do? Ideally, we're on Agile teams here, right? Everybody? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just stand on that little round piece and just beam me up, Scotty, right?
Enterprise, beam us up immediately. This crowd looks hostile.
So what we want is to be able to do that. We want to be able to see face to face. But we don't have that technology yet. I think it's getting closer, though I'm not sure I want my particles to be, disassembled and reassembled. I'm not quite sure if I'm ready for that. But what we can do is use the tools we have a lot more wisely, right? How can we be inventive using those tools, the things that we have every day? It would be very, very nice to be able to, use, if every team had big screen TVs and webcams that they could see their other teams. I've seen some teams that do that, and then others still struggle. They spend a lot of time on email or maybe the phone, but the face-to-face, you really want to try to get that and do that a little bit better using those video conferencing, whatever you can. Sometimes it's good to use tools that we have well. We don't do enough maybe getting on an airplane, not the best way, takes a while. But a lot of times, it's using your feet. People still tend not to use their feet. I see teams that are on different floors.
In the same building.
In the same building. And they pick up the phone, if you're lucky, or they write an email, right? Maybe I am. But instead, use our feet, get exercise, but use these things a whole lot more wisely, right? And it's not magic, but we don't think about it enough. Now, the hard part is not connecting the dots sometimes. Sometimes the hard part on what we're trying to do and accomplish is actually defining what the dot is. What does our customer want?
So how do we identify that dot? How do we figure that out? Well, we do have, as we said, we have a lot of tools already at our disposal that Janet and I think are going to work well for future challenges as well.
Yeah.
So customers just assume that we know what they want. Anybody else agree with me on this? Yeah. It's like, sure, they'll know what. We'll just give them a vague idea of this feature. In other words, they really want us to be able to read their minds. I would really like to know what Janet is thinking right now.
Actually, she doesn't.
But we don't have that technology yet either. We do have kittens, so that's important.
You have to have kittens. Kittens and unicorns, right?
Right. But since we don't have these, I get this a lot with customer support tickets. As people write in and a one-line sentence of, I wonder what their problem is. It would be helpful to be a mind reader. That has helped me with my telepathy skills for sure. But we also have lots of other tools that we could already use. One that Janet and I have found really helpful is impact mapping. That's from Goiko Adzik. And it's based on a lot of similar things like mind mapping and story mapping. But what I like about impact mapping is it focuses on the purpose of what we're doing. Why do we need to have this feature? Or what business problem are we trying to solve? Customers tend to come with us with, here's what I want. I want a screen that you put these inputs in and it does that. They're trying to tell us the implementation, but you know what? They hired us to develop the software. We're the ones who know how. They just need to tell us their goal, their purpose. So we identify that purpose. We think about who could help achieve that goal or who could get in our way. And then how could those people help or hinder us, which would be their impacts on whatever feature we need or whatever problem we're trying to solve. And we end up with the deliverables. May or may not be software. Maybe there's a problem the company's experiencing where maybe some mistakes are being made by salespeople somewhere. And rather than develop an automated system for them, they could just be trained better. So really have to think about the return on investment. And it's just a great way to get people in a room together, get them drawing on a board or using sticky notes. This really facilitates communication and get a good conversation going that has a bit of structure to it. So we think of good questions to ask. And I mentioned story mapping. That's another great way. Get all your stakeholders, all your whole delivery team in a room and walk through the features that you think the customer wants. What are they going to do? Make a timeline. And then you can identify what's the minimum viable product we can release and get feedback on. Then let's drill down. We'll slice that into stories and drill down on the details of it. Get something out quickly, use the short feedback loop to see if that is what we want. Because, even when you do these things, customers still don't know what they want until they see it. So we want to get something out in front of them as soon as we can. So that's another great tool that we can use. Now, some of these things are a bit hard to learn to do, or at least they were for me. The first time I went to a workshop that Jeff Patton held on story mapping at a conference, I was excited about it, and I wanted my team to try it. But I really didn't do enough preparation, and I did it wrong. It was kind of like setting up this keynote today. We're just making mistakes. But it really didn't matter because the customers still thought of questions they wouldn't have otherwise. And in that particular case, they realized that what they thought they wanted to do, they had not thought of some important, I think, some legal considerations that they really had to go back to the drawing board and start over. If we'd have just started coding on that feature, we'd have been wasting our time. So it doesn't matter as long as you're having the conversation and the questions come up.
The conversation is important.
Okay, so we can borrow from other disciplines. Yeah, and you're trying to take pictures of it. Oh my God. We can borrow from other disciplines like business analysis. Those of you who were here last year heard Mary Gorman describe the 7 product dimensions that she and Ellen Gottesdiener used. They have a book, Discover to Deliver, applying business analysis techniques in agile environments. My last team, our product owner had to work with remote stakeholders who actually had no idea of their own domain, and it was really hard to figure out what they wanted. And he wasn't experienced in knowing what questions to ask. And the other tester and I said, why don't we hire a business analyst that could help the product owner? Oh no, that would be too logical. So they wouldn't hire one, so we formed a business analysis community of practice. So some of the programmers and product owner and scrum master and testers joined in that. And we just did some reading on our own and research, and we met every couple weeks and shared what we'd learned. And after a few months, the product owner really learned some better ways of asking questions. And for myself, using something like this, if I just think through these dimensions during a planning or a brainstorming meeting, I often think of really important questions that nobody else had thought of yet. So we can borrow these tools from other disciplines, but it's another reason why we really like to have cross-functional and diverse teams. And then examples. Janet and I learned example-driven development from Brian Merrick back in 2003. And
so not new.
It's not new, definitely not new. And it has been adapted into different approaches. Dan Norris, behavior-driven development, Goiko Adzik, and David Evans, specification by example, Elizabeth Henderson, acceptance test-driven development, a whole bunch of Josh Karyevsky's story, test-driven development, lots of different adaptations of this. And there have been a lot of actual test frameworks over the years. Cucumber is a prime example for behavior-driven development, or Fitness for acceptance test-driven development, or either one, really. Lots of tools around that keep evolving. It used to be a bit hard to do this, but now it's so easy because we have so many frameworks at our disposal that we can find one that works for our team. So these things are not new, they've been around. But do we have some practices in our testing profession that maybe we've been doing for decades that really don't serve us very well for the challenges of the future?
Right. So sometimes, and this is where we think very strongly actually, that we have to start changing our conversation. And you guys are all converts, we know this, but we need to start thinking about doing things differently, and you don't see this cool slide of black holes. Look at that.
It's a black hole of a slide, I tell you.
Yeah. But we have a lot of baggage we carry with us. You know, we've come from a place sometimes, and we just carry it, and we have a hard time letting it go. So a conference like this, you can get new ideas and generate ideas, and you really want to think. But if we change the conversation, right, and that's what we really want to do, but we need to figure out what to change it from. So changing it from, talking about defects. We still want to talk about defects. People, that's where they're comfortable, and that's what they want to do.
And it's easy.
It's easy, so let's stop counting defects, counting tribbles. Tribbles was in episode 15 of season 2. So if you don't know what a tribble is, go watch the episode because it's really kind of cool. But we often start talking about, requirements and have we done them. A lot of those types of metrics that we've been using for a long time talk about the quality of the process, not the quality of the product. And so when our teams get stuck in the details, the process, and it still happens, we need to start thinking about the product, the solution. What are we delivering to our customers? What is the business value, right? So we want to start talking about business value, about risk, about uncertainty. So we have to start using a different language, right? And the latest, and it didn't show up, Ina.
Can't see it very well, but
This is the rocket ship that
it blew up a couple weeks
Blew
ago,
up.
the Antares rocket. So the company that made that rocket, I think they were using 60s parts. But perhaps there was a very, very low probability that those parts could fail, right? So they weren't worried about it. But what's the impact? It's good old-fashioned risk analysis. Maybe the probability is minuscule, but this kind of impact, I'm sure that company's reputation is ruined. I'm sure they'll never recover from it. So, well, I'm not sure, but I would just expect so. So we really have to do things like risk analysis and think about, well, I don't think that's going to happen, but depending on your domain, if there's any chance at all it could happen, you need to take steps to mitigate that risk.
Right. And so, business value, risk, uncertainty. What does business value mean? I find a lot of teams still struggle with that. So just identifying who your stakeholders are, what problem are they trying to solve? What is their need? What is their level of quality they expect? A lot of times, and even this morning somebody was talking about how they didn't feel well about their product. We see it as team members really differently than maybe our customers do. So maybe going out and working with our customers, actually seeing how they use our product. What do they use it for? We've been saying these things for a long time, but we're still somehow struggling to identify what that business value is. What problem are we trying to solve? What problem are they trying to solve?
And the risk is even more important now that software is embedded into everything, right? So everything we use now has got software in it.
Mm-hmm. So risk, and look at the pictures. I'm just so sad.
It's
we
the
should turn the TV
Enterprise and some
around.
other ship,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But risk, right, is about exposure to danger. Are we exposing someone to danger, or are we putting ourselves in danger? Are we putting our product in danger, right? That's what risk is, thinking about those sorts of things. There's different kinds of risk. We talk about product risk. We talk about project risk being schedule time and budget or something along those lines. Product risk, features, right? What are we trying to do? What kinds of things are we having in our product that's a risk? But there's a lot of different kinds of features. And if you ever watched the original series of Star Trek, they had the most wonderful, and you see, the bad guys on the original things, they were kind of original, because it was back in the 60s, right?
Yeah, back, it was kind of Doctor Who-ish, Didn't look kind of high budget, but.
But there's different kinds of risk that we have to start thinking about. Maybe reputation, right? Blowing up a rocket ship. What happens to our companies? If you're a mobile application and you put out something that doesn't work the first time.
You're going to get a terrible rating on the App Store and you're dead.
That's it. You have to start over again, right? There's risk on, say, legality. There's risks on contracts. So there's all kinds of different risks, and we have to start thinking about those different kinds of risks. The uncertainty, right? There's models that can help us, but if we start thinking about what is the uncertainty on what we're trying to build, instead of treating what we're building the same way every time, is it something simple? We have done this protocol 20 times before, 100 times before. Do we have to spend a lot of time talking about it, or can we just do it? If it's complicated, we've done it before, but we know how to do it. Well, maybe we need to break it up a little bit more so we can have a better understanding, but the risk isn't near as much. But what if it's complex, something we have no idea how to do? This is the first time we've ever tackled this problem. Should be thinking about it differently. So we really want to think about these different things. So there are models out there. One of them is Liz Keel. No.
Oh, right. When we're talking about complexity versus complicatedness versus chaos. The Cynefin model is a good example of a way that you can classify what you're about to do. And if it's simple, we don't have to worry about it. But if it's complicated, then we know we need to focus our testing on that. And if it's complex, we don't know enough, we need to do exploring and learn more about it so we can shift it over to the complicated category. And if it's chaos, let's, just deal with it. So there are a lot of models around to help us plan our testing and keep our resources. We never have enough time for testing, so we have to focus it.
Mm-hmm. And so you have to use different tools for those different complexities, right? What level of uncertainty do you have? So experiments, for example, would be a really good, for the complexity ones, right? Let's do an experiment. Let's do a spike. Let's figure it out. So I think the key is really understanding what our uncertainty is, what our risk is, and then choosing the tools that make sense. Instead of, doing what we've always done, which is what a lot of teams start doing and are doing, is really thinking about what makes sense in this situation. And we have to start getting into that whole different conversation. Now, it was interesting, even this morning in a Lean Coffee, we've always talked about visibility, but in Lean Coffee we had 3 different problems we talked about, and when we did the round afterwards to say, what did you get out of it, one of the people said, visibility, the importance of visibility. Cannot stress that enough when you're having an issue, when you're trying to solve a problem. Make it visible, however that makes sense. Distributed teams, using collaborative mind mapping techniques maybe. If you're in a co-located team, standing up against a whiteboard. Whatever it takes to make it visible, it's really what you want to start doing and thinking about, right? Into your visibility, even into your feedback cycle, right? Just what is it? How do we know?
Now we have our, continuous integration on our desktop at all times, so it's easy to see when there's a problem.
Yeah, and so one of the really nice ways to learn new things and try new things is through play. There's some, cool Lego toys up here, and I know that there's some Lego playing games happening in this
Yes, I think somebody
conference.
Did a workshop yesterday on TDD.
Yeah, Anthony
with Lego,
did
so.
on Legos. I think using Legos to do things, but we need to start thinking outside the box. So using structured play. I don't want to call it structured play. Serious play. That's the word I want. Thank you. But it's in a safe environment. Using things like Legos to learn, to start thinking outside that box, right? Sometimes it's not something really major we learn. Sometimes it's just one little key point, and it changes how we even think about what we're doing at all. Observation, right? Watching. Step back from the process a little bit. Step back from the product. Take time out. Observe. See what's going on. It's a very powerful kind of tool, observation, right? So when I go into an organization, I will look for the kinds of processes that say to me, we're doing what we've always done because it's just always been done that way. Those are the processes I'm going to look for to say, how can we tweak this? What do we need to do to change to get something different, to get a different kind of response? Those are the things that are really important, right? That's what's going to allow us to innovate. And innovation is what's going to take us to the future. Innovation is what's going to move your solution ahead, your product ahead, your organization ahead. So if you don't want to be lagging, you really need to be thinking about playing. I learn the best play from my grandchildren. I have such fun and actually learn how to get back in. I think as adults, we tend not to want to. Somebody said was it yesterday that they said, every tester has an inner 4-year-old?
Yeah, with Sandra, yeah.
Yeah, and so let that 4-year-old out. Let's do a little bit of play to learn. Now, Can we predict the future? No. But, we know it's coming. We know, Total Recall, remember where they're talking in their hand? I thought that was so cool, putting my hand up against a screen, being able to see things. How are we going to test those kinds of things, right? We laugh at the original Star Trek because it's so hokey. One of my favorite shows, but it was really quite hokey when you look back at it. But how many of those things are we now doing?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a cell phone, the communicator.
Right? But that's our future. Sometimes looking at those types of things, we're going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Are we going to have a chip implanted in our thing that we can talk on the phone, right? So we don't lose our phones all the time. What is next?
That would be good.
And we have to be, hey, I'm all for that. If I don't have to carry stuff around, I'm good. But we really have to be thinking about, what do our customers want? What is our product quality? How are we going to keep customers? Because it's very much I like what you're doing better than what they're doing. So will you pay me to come to you? Right? That's a lot of things that are happening. We have to keep our customers happy to have them, to keep them, right? So we need to be starting to think about those sorts of things. Now, if we take and think about business value, risk, uncertainty, right? What is our risk model? What do we want to do when we start, thinking about these things? How are we going to test according to our risk model, according to what business value is? So instead of thinking about bugs and requirements and test-based kinds of ideas, let's start thinking differently. Let's start talking differently. Let's start having those conversations, right? Now, that customer validation, we're never going to stop. We should never stop, right? And if every team member took a holistic view of, the product release, the quality of the product, the risks that it takes, right, or the faces, if every person on that team did that, they would be a very valuable contributor to the product, to the solution, right? And I think that's where we really want to be. And so let's just kind of wrap this up a little bit. We want to talk about how we're going to use this today, this week, next month, 2 years from now, right? So what do we want to kind of think about doing? What's next on your horizon?
Right. What's your Agile testing future? Each one of us is going to have a different experience. So we know we don't have transporters, we can't shapeshift. We might be a little closer to having telepathy, I'm not sure. But
Good old mind meld.
Our message to you is think for yourself. Don't let some expert come and say, here's the one true way to do X. This is how we do testing, or this is how we do software development. Get ideas and experiment with them. Try small experiments that don't take too long so you get a quick feedback cycle. Inspect and adapt. Look at how that experiment worked out for you. Do you want to tweak what you're doing, a new practice that you tried or a new tool, and try again with a different outlook, or do you want to just scrap that and start over with something new? Better to cut your losses if it's not working for you, right? And so this conference is going to be a great opportunity for you to get those ideas to take back to your team and experiment. At the end of the conference on Thursday, Janet and I are going to do a quick little wrap-up of what we learned at the conference. And it's going to be really fun, so you don't want to leave the conference early. And then we're also going to make you watch our slides again once we get them fixed. But it's going to be fun, and what we want to do is to help you take something away from here. I mean, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to meet a lot of new people. That's the most important thing, making those connections, so that you remember, hey, I met David at the conference, and he's really good at that specification by example thing. I want to know more about that. And so then you know who you can get in contact with when you have that challenge in the future. So another thing that we're going to do to try to help you focus on your challenges is we're going to have a pin board or something, a big board out here in the expo area somewhere, where you can write down what's your challenge for the future on a sticky note, or maybe you have more than one, probably. And then as you get ideas from different sessions, write down those ideas, write down the experiments you're going to try, and if you don't mind, put your name on it, and maybe somebody else can say, hey, I've got that problem too. I want to go talk to that person and think through this idea a little bit more. Make those contacts. And we're ready for the next slide?
Yeah.
So the future's here.
No.
And it's going to be a fire hose of information this week. We definitely live in unicorn land here.
Yes.
And anything is possible, right? So we want to learn things that when we go back to our real jobs, that these things are going to help us. So choose your conference activities wisely. Go play in the test lab, practice, get some hands-on practice. All kinds of different sessions available to you. If you have a challenge and you look at the program and it's like, well, there's no session here that really addresses that challenge, go schedule an open space session. There are lots of people here who can help you. We've got, 450 people this year or something like that? 500. So awesome. There's going to be somebody else here who's experiencing your same challenge and could help you with that. So schedule an open space. Try the hands-on coding dojos and testing dojos. And, talk with somebody new at lunch. Or at dinner, sit down and talk to somebody about, hey, what sessions did you go to today? What did you learn? I find the best way to learn is teaching somebody else, relating to somebody else what you learned. I like to take sketch notes. That helps me remember. A year after a conference, I can look at my sketch notes and remember what I learned at those sessions. Some of you might know I like to live tweet as well. But that helps me retain the ideas. Pete Whalen live blogs. That's a great way to help you retain what you learned, and so help you sip at the fire hose. So we'd like to ask Super Agile person. Do we have a microphone for him?
Yes.
Come on up, Super Agile person. Well, what is your challenge that you're working on this week, and what would you hope to learn?
Well, the funny thing is that what I came here for is to find out what my next project should be, and in fact I already did this morning in the Lean Cafe. So there's one tip, go to the Lean Coffee. It's excellent. Anyway, 2 tips that I would like to share with you, which are pretty specific. The first one is a don't. Do not optimize for the outcome of a single session or event. Especially not if it happens to be a night out in the bar, right? This is a system. Try to get the most out of the whole conference, not just tonight's costume party.
But it's fun.
And the second one, if you are an introvert like me, take a time out if you need it. Just go outside for a walk if you need it. Or go back to the hotel room and meditate, or do qigong, or whatever you do to relax. Don't drink to relax. Just, take your time out. Even leave out a whole session or a whole afternoon. If you need that, you need it. So these are my tips. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Super Agile person. And by the way, Stefan has been at every single Agile Testing Days, and so has Gerard back there. I don't know who else has been here every
How many people
year.
have been here for every single?
All 6 years. Oh, we have a
Look
few.
at it.
That's
There's
awesome.
A few. Excellent.
Okay. So it's a community. It feels like coming home every year, so you'll want to come back.
Yeah. There's a continuity, that you just can't replace.
And we don't necessarily have the unicorn meme this year, but so far we've got ketchup and table 2. So I don't know what's going to come out of this conference.
I think the table 2 will, we'll do that.
That might be better best forgotten.
Exactly. But we will put these slides, and you will be able to see them on our website, and I'm guessing we can give them for this conference website. We encourage people to email us to ask questions or anything else. And we have 4 minutes left.
Okay.
So we can take questions.
Questions? Guys, any question?
Oh, come on. Somebody's got to have a question.
Okay, so the first one.
So your talk talked about the future of testing. What do you think is the biggest risk for the software testing profession in the future?
Getting stagnant.
Biggest risk.
I think getting stagnant, just not moving, not trying new things. I think that's a huge risk. I'm not sure if it's the biggest one, but that's the first one that comes to my mind.
And I see it less, but a lot of testers have sort of resisted the move to cross-functional teams because they want to be independent, they want to be valued for their testing profession. In our open space this morning, Cheesy had a controversial topic, as he usually does, of should we eliminate the tester role? And he's experimented at the teams he works with at just calling everybody on the team a developer, because we're all developing software. And so some people are doing testing activities, some people are doing coding activities. A lot of us do multiple activities. And that's working out really well for his teams. So I think the lines are going to get more blurry, but I don't think that's a danger for testing. I think that means more people value testing, and I'm seeing that on my team. What they value the most on my team right now is the exploratory testing ability, because we're able to find issues and think of things that they wouldn't have thought of because they haven't got that experience. So that's my thought. Anybody else have a thought that wants to contribute what they think is the future for testers? Yeah?
Me.
All right.
I think that the profession changed the last years, and I think what you need is more knowledge, and I think for the future. I think that you need not only testers, you need also that the tester has a lot of knowledge on programming. Okay, it's coming more and more, and there is a lot of things coming from the new technology that you have to learn. So
Right.
I think the time is gone when you can put someone to test. It's gone. Okay, so you need people with skill.
I read a really interesting article in the New Yorker the other day that was about how in so many areas performance standards have increased. Like if you look at something like basketball, a lot of the players that played in the NBA in the United States in the 70s wouldn't make a team today because the level of coaching and the amount of coaches and all the different training they do physically and mentally has changed the profession. And this has happened everywhere. And they used an example of the lean manufacturing in Japan after the war when they brought Deming over to help them understand quality better. They raised the level of car manufacturing an incredible amount. And the author's conclusion is we need to learn how to learn, and we need to learn how to improve. And that's the key, is just being able to gain those new skills and practice them. I thought that was a real interesting insight.
Watch your children or your grandchildren, how they learn, how they adapt. And that's what we really want to do, right?
More questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
So go out and learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my dears,
We're going to go beam
I
up
know-
now.